Hello and welcome. I'm Anna Estrada, the founder of Gaia Art Bar, where we invite conversation with visionary artists and healers who work with the frequency of land, light, and sound in mystical ways. In this series, Creative Sovereignty, we'll explore what it means to trust our inner authority and anchor ourselves in presence while we express our vision and offer service in a complex world. So today, I'm honored to welcome Yannick Fernandes. He is a transformation catalyst and empowerment mentor based in Salt Lake City. And I'm so happy that he's joining us. And he has a project called Multidimensional Embodiment, which he's going to tell us more about. So hello, Yannick.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, my name is Yannick, for all of you that don't know me. And I serve as a bridge between the higher dimensions and the lower dimensions and support people here in the physical realm to create tangible transformation through the energy that I bring in from the spirit world, serving as an intuitive healer, as an alchemist, and as a guide to support people on their path of ascension. And so I really wanted to take this moment to open this space with a beautiful prayer so we can set this energy for this beautiful share that we're going to have today. And just
Wonderful.
invite you to close your eyes for a moment and connect with yourself as we ask that all our higher selves connect and we call forth all our spirit guides, all the angels, and all the beings of light that support our path. And as we ask that everybody that listens to this podcast and this transmissions receives the highest energies that support their path, and that all information revealed is of true support to the community and all that are in resonance what we're going to share. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Beautiful. So tell us more about yourself. And also, because we're focusing on creative sovereignty, when you hear those words, what does that mean to you? And how do you cultivate that in your life and with your clients and your multidimensional embodiment? Because that is a lot about what creative sovereignty is. So if you could tell us more about yourself and what you're doing, that would be wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. And well, about myself is that I had the opportunity that really, since my big awakening, I have dedicated and devoted my whole life to this path of spirituality and understanding mysticism. And I have been studying in the different mystery schools and ancient traditions, and I always have been called to magic, right? The science behind the unseen world, what we cannot see with our eye, and to understand that better, to actually be able to support myself, to change my life, to live the life that I really want to live. And over time, that has developed in supporting others with that. So, one thing I really specialize and focus on is the metaphysical aspect of healing and how your body, so how your physical, mental, emotional body connects with your light body, right? And your soul. And why I chose to really start focusing on my project, what I call multidimensional embodiment, is that sometimes I see that there's this like disconnect. So when I say disconnect, there's this world of embodiment where people like to dance and people like to move their body and work somatically, but somehow they're not so connected to the woo-woo stuff, right? The stuff that is kind of out there because they don't understand it. But a lot of times, really, where the deeper transformation lies is in remembering who we are and understanding our gifts and understanding who we have been for many lifetimes and who we are beyond this 3D reality. And so, what I look to do with my project is really to bridge that gap. So, there can be that because sometimes the people that are more into the multidimensional and psychic stuff, then they're sometimes very disembodied. You probably have
So let me
found.
ask you this. Let me ask you this. So, going back to your own awakening, okay?
Mhm.
How how did that happen? And exactly how did your perceptions change after that awakening? Is that when how did you start to experience greater connection between your spiritual, energetic self and your body? Like, how did you start to heal that gap in yourself?
Well, my awakening really started because I my whole life sort of fought against to not become like my father. And one day I was on vacation with him, and I had to see myself in the mirror, and it was really painful because I saw myself at the other side of the coin, and suddenly could see how I was not like him, but I was the other side of the coin. So I had all these. So I was the victim, and he was the perpetrator, and this like just allowed me to see that big web of interconnectedness and see how I was still reflecting myself in the same thing I was trying to not become for such a long time.
That's
And
so interesting because, that's like the projection. And we see that all the time when there is just a passionate repulsion towards something in the outer, something or someone in the outer world. Oftentimes it's triggering our own shadow. And we're blind to it because we become, very reactive or emotional as we're watching this person or this group or a certain quality that really that we react, we get triggered. And so that's very interesting that you share that because if you're trying to be the opposite of your father, you're still in that dynamic, even though you think you're being opposite. So that's really interesting that was part of, just having more clarity about who you are.
yeah, and that realization when I could see myself in the mirror so clearly, that was yeah, that was really the big wake up call for me where it was okay, like whatever I've been trying until now, because I tried a lot of different things, was like, this is not working. What hasn't like worked in the way I wanted to work in what I envision. And, even if I didn't had no idea at that time, I always remembered, well, there's more potential in me than that. And this is not the life how I want to live my life. And this is really where my journey started. And then it has been just a wild journey because I was committed and said, because you asked me about creative sovereignty. I think so much of it in life and just in general and spiritually, has to do with choice. It has to do with choice and the commitment that you say to whatever you're experiencing, I'm going to find a way, I'm going to find a solution. And it's not about focusing on the how, but it's about you saying, okay, this is enough. And I'm, willing to explore the unknown and have faith and trust that there's something else waiting for me. And so that's the choice I made. And that led me and keeps leading me to miraculous experiences and great masters and many different things that I have found along the way to look for the answers that I've been seeking.
So do you feel like you reconciled that, that relationship? How did you reconcile that? How did you liberate yourself from that pattern?
Well, it was more that, it was definitely a journey of many turns and loops and many different things that I've experienced. But really, I feel a big breakthrough for me was like probably 2.5 years ago, where sort of that was the moment where a lot of the integration of what I'm doing today really started anchoring in. Because when it started, let's say I tried, a lot of studying just a lot of the spiritual stuff and reading books and all these kind of things. And then, it brought me more into, okay, facing all my shadow work and somatic healing and all that stuff. And I was in that world for a few years. So I was, being trained as a somatic bodywork practitioner and trauma healing and all these things. But what happened is that I felt stuck. There were things I just could not resolve there, and that's when I connected with some really powerful people that helped me work through certain distortions and fragmentations that happened to me when I was a very young child. And on a multidimensional level, was able to resolve these distortions, and actually from that place truly found peace and forgiveness with him, and as
Mm.
well the relationship towards myself.
Mhm.
And so, I think that's why it's so important, that aspect of, well, embodying that multidimensional, that higher self, that higher light, but in the physical as well, and not there to be a disconnect, right? And a lot of times I see that disconnect, and that's sort of, in short, how like things really started clicking in my own reality, and where I truly made peace in my heart with all the, because I went through a lot of very painful trauma and a lot of very hard experiences in my early childhood. And so, like, that really liberated me from all of that. And from that place, I came to remember the wholeness within me, and stopped seeking for healing, and stopped seeking for, that sense of I was broken, which was with me for a very long time. And I know many people are facing that sense of feeling so broken. And so I really, in my heart, understand and, wish to support others in that journey back to wholeness, because I think there's really nothing more painful than that feeling of you just don't know who you are, and you're trying to figure it out. And so that is really a lot of my own journey, and then learning how to integrate that and use different tools and my own skills and abilities to support others in that.
That's amazing. It's really important because, yes, we can get stuck in processing and reprocessing trauma. That happens a lot, and taking on that identity of being victimized, and it's it's very important to face that, and then it's also important to transcend that, go beyond that. And yes, working in multidimensionally and experiencing, as you were saying, healing the fragmentation that we experience through trauma, coming back into wholeness, and then being able to access other dimensions that are matching that frequency of wholeness, because we can really, and we see that a lot in our society. That's why I think your work is very important, of just being stuck in that, in feeling disempowered and feeling victimized and feeling like there's no way to transform. It's like so big, the system, systemic abuse and systemic oppression. Those things feel so big and so heavy. And it's really important to share, if you feel that you've been able to transcend those things and find wholeness, and be able to experience freedom in the way that you live, in the way that you express. It's so important to share that with others. And so I think that is very important work. So I thank you for having that as a big part of your mission.
Yes, and this, I wanted to go back towards what you asked me before about, what creative sovereignty means for me. And what I want to share about that, what I feel is such an important part is, the willingness of to let go of your own story is
Mm.
such a cornerstone in like stepping into a place of sovereignty. Because usually, when you come from a place where you're really traumatized, and there's just, a lot of like horrible things that happen to you that have been really intense, and like a lot of dark things that just happened, in my own life. And to make a choice, that it's not about knowing how, but to make a choice that you are willing to tell a different story, even if you're not fully there yet. But that possibility of you telling a different story about who you are is essentially an act of radical self-expression and sovereignty, because it will guide you towards that. It might take a while. It's not that it immediately will be, oh, you say, oh, like I have the story of someone successful and someone that had the most beautiful childhood. No, that it's not what it's about. But what it's about is to be willing to let go of what is familiar to you. Because what I see a lot is people get stuck in the familiar. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, what is familiar is a life of misery, a life of suffering, a life of pain, a life of being hurt, a life of being abandoned. And so, like, I think that act of that sovereignty is really so much has to do with a choice. Because once you make a choice and take action towards that, in whatever small little ways that is, the universe and God will be able to pour into you new things, new opportunities, new people to work with, new realizations, and your transformation and your evolution will be able to accelerate a lot. And this is something I really wish people to know from the bottom of my heart, that one thing I do is I focus on helping people process the negative emotions and memories, because a lot of times it's, well, how am I going to tell a new story if every time I think about it I feel these, like, all these things from these triggers. So sure, you want to clean up all the, like, negative memories and emotions that are, let's say, contradictory to that what you want, or a new story. But as well, there's this, like, leap of faith where we have to be willing to say, okay, I'm willing to explore the unknown. And it might feel really scary and uncomfortable at first, because you don't know how it feels like to be someone happy, fulfilled, joyful, and that lives life in an easeful way. And this choice, I think, is really one of the biggest acts of sovereignty that we can choose in this life, which will then have a ripple effect in our own life and in our friends' life and those people that we touch.
So, yes, that's amazing. Letting go of your story. And it is hard because it can be a big part of your identity and
Mm.
how you perceive everything through this filter of your story. And then if you're not, and it's a process, because if you're not ready to let go of that, it's really offensive if somebody asks you to let go of your story. It does feel like you're being silenced, or that you're not being heard. And so it's a process of becoming aware of that story, becoming aware of how much I identify with that story, that it's scary to let it go, because then it's like, who am I if I'm not this person that's fighting for this, or traumatized by that? And again, the it's a process, because we don't want to dismiss the story or the trauma. It's like we have to acknowledge it, and we can, one thing that I work with myself and others is just bringing the story to the altar, bringing it to the altar, and asking for the divine presence to come forth and infuse my whole being with light. And in that light, it's like the creative life force of the universe, the light of source. And if we're willing, as you said, because it's a choice, we're willing to let it go. Like, like even communicating with the divine presence and saying, I am so ready to let this go. I'm so ready to have a different experience of life. Like, we can do that. We can just offer it to the light, and it will shift, it will transform. And then we'll go from a place of, like you're saying, seeking, to knowing who we are, and anchoring into that awareness of our own selves as beings of light. And so I love that. It's such a powerful and effective practice to bring that sense of freedom. And I love how you say that it's a radical choice. It's a radical to say, I'm willing to let go of this story, and have another experience, and trust, because in that process, it's an emptying, it's a void, and it's very uncomfortable to feel your story dissolving, your sense of identity dissolving. But it has to, in order for to give birth to this new experience. And so it's so important to have a guide and to have support, because somebody that's going to remind you, oh, this is what, oh, you feel, empty or unmotivated, or like this heaviness, when you're releasing these energies, that can happen. And if you don't understand, and it's important to have a guide that's saying, yeah, that's what's happening. Great. That's a good thing. Just let it move through you. And that type of support is super important.
I absolutely agree. And, for me personally, I always have been and always will be my best investment. And for sure, what I have invested the most money in my life is myself. And most likely will continue to do so. And, I personally really, for me, resonate with the path of an alchemist. And it's that what you were explaining, right? That was so beautiful what you shared about that deep surrender and that moment when like it's that identity death, right? What people call like ego death, or like when you really need to go through that death process, and it's quite uncomfortable while you're in that death process, and there's no other way to be it differently if you want a true alchemical transformation, because it cannot happen unless you fully surrender and let go of whatever it is, and that at the other hand, at the other side, will equal the breakthrough and the transformation that you get to experience. So this is something, good to remember, so we can remember that essentially what you have to win at the other side. Because what I know from myself, from my story, from not knowing who I am and feeling so fragmented and so broken, and numbing myself for such a long time because it was just too much for me to take everything I went through, is the peace, the inner peace of just knowing who I am. This is something, it's priceless, because essentially that's what we all are here for, right? To experience and explore ourselves and express ourselves towards the world, and do whatever matters to us in this lifetime. And I think the level of peace and freedom that I have been seeking and believe many people are seeking is truly, in essence, it's that, right? It's that remembrance and that connection to themselves and to source that, allows you to live your life in a way that, is better in any way.
Yes. So, yeah, wow. This is wonderful. The Alchemy of Surrender. Um, One of the things, the reason why I connected with you and became aware of you in social media and here in Salt Lake, is because you have offered several grid work gatherings, and that was just very appealing to me. I just thought, oh, I really want to participate in that, because that's part of the of this alchemy of letting go of the story, and birthing a new one, our perspective of our purpose on the planet, our experience of being on the planet, how we relate to the earth, each other, all of that starts to transform. And one of the most beautiful experiences that I've had is in doing grid work and really connecting with the earth in such an intimate way, and also receiving the light, the communicating with these beings of light that you were talking about, the angels and ascended masters and galactic beings of light. And that we have to do that from a place of grounding. It's not like we're flying off into the galaxy. All of these dimensions are accessible inside ourselves. And so I would love for you to share a little bit more about the grid work and how the group, how it felt to do that in a group and how you experienced, because here we are in Salt Lake City, so we can share a little bit about the land here.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I moved, for everybody that doesn't know me, I moved here to Salt Lake City in April and have been living here for, let's say, a shorter time. And I have been really doing just a lot of work on the land just by my own, where I usually go into inner earth and I assist with different tasks that my higher self gives me, so to say. And a lot of times it's about purifying and cleansing and, electrifying the grid and activating the grid and, activating different parts of the grid, because understanding that we are part of Earth and that we cannot evolve without Earth, and that our evolution is tied to the evolution as well of Earth, and because it's our host planet. So one thing I always say, and it's part of why the name of my project, multidimensional embodiment, is that a lot of times people talk about ascension, but a lot about is about descension. So it's like, how much of your consciousness of who you really are can you actually stabilize and hold in that physical vessel to bring the most amount of light from the higher dimensions and anchor them into this physical plane. And so the grid work, it was just after a while, my guides and, my guidance was just, okay, it's time for you to find others to get some support, because this is not something meant to be done only by yourself. So I was working on all the different canyons here in Salt Lake City. There's 7 major canyons, and the different canyons represent the different chakras of Salt Lake City. So they all, the water streams that represent the streams of consciousness that flow into Salt Lake City, where we have the Great Salt Lake, which is a really big portal and a really big nexus point, right? Because it used to be called the nexus point of the West, because here all the grid lines, the ley lines intersect that go from west to east. So it's a really major grid intersection point. But
Yes.
as well, in my own work and what I have discovered here, there's a lot of imbalance that happened from a few hundred years ago, with the whole patriarchy, what made it a very good match on a resonance level for, the Mormon culture that came, and like a lot of the distortion that came in that, and especially the oppression of the divine feminine and more the feminine energy, which is about the earth, right? And about the honoring of the earth. And bringing people together has been just really, really beautiful, because it allowed me to step out of the place of doing everything by my own, but rather collaborations to emerge. And one thing I just want to say about grid work, because there's different people that talk about it, and I don't know if I resonate with all of the perspectives, but that's okay. But what I want to share about, for me and personally, it's the humility, because if you truly do grid work, it's about service. If
Yes.
there's anything else, then I don't know, like in my view of reality, you're not really doing grid work. You're like trying to be cool or something like that because of your ego, because true grid work is really about service. And there's just this sense of pure, heartfelt, pure service, because it's like, well, my mission and part of my mission and what I came here to do, to be of service to the earth and help that recalibration for the ascension journey that we are on in these special times on planet Earth. And so this is something I love so much about grid work and ceremony in that kind of way, because it's a very pure kind of way in which you gather, where the intention from where we come from and what we really are doing here is, for me, crystal clear. And that just carries a deep beauty that touches you on a very deep level and touches me on a very deep level. And I think everybody that is into doing stuff like this or has feel called to that, to just spend some time to assist the earth, to give back, because we live in a culture where we take from the earth, where we extract crystals, where we extract minerals, where we, all the monocrops and all the way how we deal with the earth is very like taking, 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 taking. And this is about giving back. And I even get full body chills in my body because it's about giving back. And I get full body chills because I know spirit is with me, confirming everything that I'm saying right now. And so it just has a special place in my heart. Yeah, which I love to connect with others with and show up in
Well,
that.
yeah, yeah. Like, well, the land, I've worked a lot with, because I do museum work, and there's a whole process, an initiative going on right now to decolonize the collections, especially collections that come from Mesoamerica and what they call ancient America. And the whole process is about transforming the perspective that, these cultures are alive and they have descendants, and there is healing that needs to happen with the land, a lot of the atrocities that occurred on the land in the Americas. And so a few years ago, I remember I was in Spain. I was visiting Spain with a dear friend of mine who is also a healer and a light worker, and so we're there enjoying our holiday in the northern coast of Spain, and I was living in Florida at the time, and there came a huge hurricane was coming, and it was a monster. It was just about going to completely and absorb the Caribbean and Florida. And so there was all kinds in it, and because we have all this technology now, we can observe this hurricane, where it's coming from. We can predict where it's going to hit. And this storm just kept getting bigger and bigger. And but when we looked at it energetically, it was so powerful because that wind, that energy, that force was coming through the Caribbean and purifying that area, purifying the ocean, purifying the land and we were in Spain, so we were connecting that vibration of the conquistadors, the conquest, that conquest energy that came in at full force into the Americas, and the land there in the Caribbean. And, which is, I mean, this is where the slave trade thrived. And there's so much suffering that occurred there. And so like some of these natural occurrences can come in and clear, just like the light, coming in and clearing all of that it's like that imprint. It's an imprint that's there, and that affects the consciousness of the place and the people. And in some areas in the Caribbean, there's still a lot of oppression that occurs. And so anyway, we were able to contribute to that clearing just by being aware that this is what's going on, and being able to see underneath the surface of, if there's destruction or fear, or with the evacuations and the uncertainty, and just being able to hold space for the divine and say, okay, we can do this. We're ready to clean this up, and holding space for that occurrence, for that's taking place, and to hold space for the people that are there, that are going through this. Because when you're in the middle of it, it's another experience than observing it from afar, but we can contribute by holding space and as much awareness as we can, and grounding and clarity as these clearings are occurring on the planet and purifying the land. So that was a, for me, that's when I really understood what grid work is, and being able to contribute and having an assignment. It was, I mean, we were on the coast, facing the Atlantic, and doing this work, and also connecting with people in Florida who are preparing to receive. And then the strength of a hurricane shifts according to the temperature of the water. And so, the hurricane, lost some of its power as it came closer to the land, and the temperatures of the water shifted. And so in that case, not in all cases, the devastation wasn't as great as it could have been, because it did shift and went like along the coast instead of going right into Florida. So these experiences are, you just, when you have these experiences, you just, the divine, all these other dimensions become very real, with each experience. So it's like you're cultivating that sovereignty as well. It takes time and experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. And, I think one really important aspect there is that, well, I think a lot of these natural disasters happen because of human consciousness and because we are not evolving, and people are holding on to a lot of the distortion that is stored in our own subconscious collectively, and because there's so much resistance towards change and so much of that. So then usually the way how I see it is that these disasters happen when there's we consciously, with our consciousness of humanity, not able to evolve and actually be in sync with the rhythms of the earth, and then these disasters happen to actually clear that stuff.
Mhm.
It's very interesting, that relationship, because I know other people that have been doing this work for a longer time, and how, well, if the consciousness is able to be balanced, and if enough of us do our own personal work, because that kind of brings me back towards something I wanted to really share. And we talked about the story before, and and now we're talking about service. And I really want to share from my perspective why this is so important, and which why I feel to mention this again, is that there's such a profound relationship between letting go of your story and your ability to truly be of service. Because what I know from myself, and what I see a lot in others, and what I see, for example, in people that are really excellent listeners, that really know how to listen, not only with the mind, but with their heart, with their body, energetically, is usually people that are able to get out of their own story. And from that place of that purity, you're able to step into greater service, right? Because you're like, okay, like I'm able to get out of my own way, meaning like I'm able to let go of my own story and my own smaller self, my Yannick Fernandes personality of who I am in the 3D. But I'm able to let go of that and focus the entirety of my presence and energy on whatever it is. If I'm assisting another human, if I'm assisting the land, and there's such a profound relationship between that capacity to truly be of service. And I think so many are looking for that. And personally, that's why I'm here, to be of service. And so I just wanted to connect these dots because they felt relevant to be connected.
Yes, absolutely. Service is so important at this time. And I think, like for me, I'll just share a service that I've been assigned to do is, within myself, to do the best I can in this cultural environment to do the best I can to stay out of polarization. Because I've become aware that when we are so polarized, that we go completely unconscious. Like there, we only see our own story and our own pain, and we cannot at all connect to another perspective, another experience of the same situation. And so like I feel, and I share that with people that I talk with. Let's do the best we can to not polarize. Like when we feel ourselves getting into that space of, seeing all the darkness out there, and
Yeah,
and how we have to fight it and rise up and all that kind of stuff with so much rage and confusion. And it's not that we don't stand up for ourselves. It's just that we have to do it from a place of sovereignty
mhm.
and pull back these projections. And like you were saying, when you see the shadow, like, oh, I have that's in me. Part of me is creating that out there. And how do I reconcile that inside myself first? And then from that place, then take action if necessary. And, many times, once that reconciliation occurs, there's really no action that needs to be taken, other than allowing. And so I just feel that that's a service that we can offer.
What is so
Conscious.
what makes me smile about what you're sharing is, the fact how, I always have been fascinated how life has these paradoxes, right? So there's like the paradox of, well, what you're saying, right? When things are so polarized, where it's like, oh, you're so focused on yourself and your own story and whatever's going on, and you can't really see anything else. And then at the same time, it's like, well, the liberation of that actually is being in service. Right? But the paradox is, well, you still want to, like, it's not like that you say, oh, I don't care about my own story, because that will not work so well. Because if you like neglect your own story and your own things, then most likely you're going to still be struggling, because a part of you doesn't feel fully realized and has all these experiences, right? And I notice sometimes in myself when, like there's moments when you have like a day that isn't going so great, right? And I have a day that isn't going so great, and I know, oh, like I actually have a session to give like late in the afternoon, and I just feel like, oh, like in the middle of processing my own things and stuff like this, because, and you know of course it's like, well, we want to tend to our own things, and that's something I always put first, to always be working on my own stuff. But as well, there's that place of the story where it's like, okay, that paradox where actually stepping out of it is actually the liberation, where actually you're able to say, okay, actually I'm all right and I'm good enough to be able to focus my consciousness and my energy on something else. And actually after that, you will a lot of times feel so much fulfillment and liberation, just from the fact that you call upon that higher power, you call upon source and all the energy available for you, and get out of your own way and actually show up in service. And I think it's such an interesting paradox, because there's times, or for when people say, oh, I only will serve others when I'm at my best. And I absolutely agree that you should be in a good state energetically to be of service to others. But as well, there's this like little tweak where sometimes it's like you need to get out of your own way and overcome that own part of where you are, get lost in your own stories and in your own issues, that allows you to actually transcend that and transcend into, being of service to the earth, and that act of sovereignty that not only ripples in your own life, but as well towards others, in the way how you choose to show up and what you give your attention to. And usually when you do that, then you find yourself suddenly actually that you're not so worried about your own story anymore. So
Right.
it's just a very interesting, you know, paradox how a lot of these deeper truths in life, I find to discover it always very interesting how they are always very paradoxical in its nature.
It's true. Yeah. Like another one is, like these pains that we have, like that are very deep and, that sometimes keep like they keep coming back, like you think you worked on it, you think it's over, and then it gets triggered again by something. And you're like, oh, here we are again, with this issue or this suffering that I have. And and again, it takes time and I don't know, sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not in this. But it's like the paradox is that you have to feel it. You just have to let it be and allow yourself to feel it and allow the energy to move through you as opposed to distracting. And and that's a paradox there as well. That it's if until we're willing to feel it and acknowledge it, we cannot let it go. It just becomes, again, repressed. And so, again, it really brings up again the importance, if there's something like that is challenging, to seek out a guide that you resonate with that can support you in processing that, the trauma or the feelings. And because we don't have to do these things all alone. We don't have to be isolate. And sometimes sensitive people do isolate a lot because, we're protecting ourselves. And we've had um, experiences of that are painful, and so you just want to keep it to yourself and do it on your own, but also it can be super helpful to find a guide, find a group in order to receive support in this area. And so how can people contact you, Yannick? Are you offering a program that we can put a link in our when we post this video on YouTube of how to reach you? And is there a specific introductory offering that you have that you can share with us a little bit about?
Yeah, so currently I'm working on my website, but like people can find me on social media. I will share my link tree and my Instagram so people can find me under unique_alchemy on Instagram or on Facebook. And I will have a course coming up for men. So what is actually about reclaiming their sovereignty and working with really healing their relationship to their sexuality, which will be launching probably like end of November. There's no official links yet on my website, but people can contact me about that privately. And then as well, people can contact me privately about my private one-on-one sessions where I support people to really see the root of their issues. So I look into where issues start, and then it's like pulling a weed, right? I look into what is the weed and I look at the roots and we pull it out of you and basically look and how does it entangle with you multidimensionally on your different bodies in your past lives, if there's ancestral things going on, and how trauma relates to past life experiences and where it's stored in your body physically and the inflammation that it has caused, and basically help people to really effectively process and rewire this. And as well, for people that seek for more, I offer like one-on-one individualized mentorship containers and programs, and have a program called Codes of Resurrection. And that is a 4-month program where I guide people in depth on a one-on-one journey into redefining their life purpose and stepping into their power, fully overcoming the wounds of their past and really creating a life on their own terms. And if you want to learn,
Fantastic.
just can contact me, and I will be able to share more. As well, I have a YouTube channel which I'm starting where there are some free offerings and some small things where people can tap into more of my energy and some small guided meditations and things like that.
Wonderful. And you do a lot of these things online. So it doesn't matter where you live, you can participate in these offerings. Um, so that's fantastic. So yeah, we'll include all the links on how to contact you. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's just been wonderful to talk with you. I just feel so much resonance, and I hope to see you in person soon. And I'd love to participate in one of your gatherings. So let me know what's going on, and I'll see you again soon, Yanni. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was honored to be here, and have a beautiful day. I connect with you soon.
Thank you.
Goodbye.